back to the conversation on The Richard Syrett Show. News Talk, Sauga 960 AM.
All right, welcome back. And at this time, every Thursday, we dedicate 10 minutes or so in defense of women and often in defense of children. And we're going to speak with a courageous woman. She's been on the program before, Carolyn Burjoski, who spent over 20 years as an elementary school teacher with the Waterloo Region District School Board, working with children who had gaps in their education because they came from countries with political strife and war. She really didn't spend much time thinking about the machinations of the school board, the politics, school board trustees, and so forth, until one day she was concerned about the age-appropriateness of some of the sexual content contained in some school library materials, and so she took her concerns to the school board. She had a delegation to the Board of Trustees, and did not end well. This was back in January of 2022. She was defamed. She suffered some health results as a result of, or health issues rather, serious health issues as a result of her shoddy, cowardly treatment by the school board, and she's taking legal action, and she's here with an update. Carolyn Burjoski, welcome back to the Richard Syrett Show. How are you?
I'm fine. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and thank you for joining us again. Just very quickly, I know you've told this story so many times, but take us back to that Board of Trustees, school board, that Board of Trustees meeting in January of 2022. You were given 10 minutes to speak about your concerns about the sexual content in some of the school library materials. What happened after that?
Well, I'll start after they kicked me out, unless you want me to tell anything about it.
Well, no, I think it's, I think we know you tried to read from some of this material. They gave you 10 minutes to speak. You were cut off by the board chair. He said that you had violated the Human Rights Code.
Right.
So then from there, what happened?
Well, so they cut me off after 4 minutes, and they deliberated on, there was some disagreement around whether some of the trustees thought I shouldn't be kicked out, that I should be able to say what I had come to say. But they did a 5-4 vote, and then they booted me off of the Zoom call. And I thought it was over at that point. I was really surprised they kicked me out without even hearing what I had to say. But what was surprising, that almost immediately there started to be this discourse on social media, in which particularly the chairman of the board and some other people as well, including the person who was supposed to represent me, was going to represent me as my union rep, started to characterize my talk as transphobic, and then started to make it look like I was there to say something transphobic. I never said anything transphobic. I was just asking questions. I actually mostly read books that were in the library, and I questioned the age appropriateness of them. I'm not a book banner. I'm not interested in book banning. In fact, it was the school board that was doing some book banning. They were taking books out of the library, and that's what brought me to the school board. They were calling books like Dr. Seuss and To Kill a Mockingbird, and if you see the Peel board, and they removed a bunch of books that were older than I think 2008, and they removed them. So my question was really, what is the underlying philosophy of all the things that we're seeing in regard to how race is being treated in schools and how gender is being treated in schools, and how discussion, critical thinking has suddenly, we're not talking about that anymore. We're not encouraging it. So I woke up the next day and got a phone call from my school board, human resources person, and she basically told me not to come back to school, that I was being investigated, and I couldn't contact my students, their colleagues, and the isolation started to happen right away. And I see that that's part of what they do. They isolate you. They don't want you to impact your colleagues or your students. And then they started this investigation. Now, luckily, I had all my paperwork in to retire about 2 weeks later, and that made it tolerable for me, because they were doing everything they could to fire me before I retired. So, and then every
right.
day that week, this chairman of the board got on social media and radio and characterized my words as transphobic and said things I did not say. He said what I said would cause trans people to be attacked in the street, and that I was not accepting the existence of trans people and all this stuff. And all I did was say, these books that you're putting in the library are going to confuse kids, right? I was basically saying that.
Right.
So then after a while, I thought, this is crazy. This is insane. People were saying, Carolyn, you got to speak up. But I felt like, well, if I've worked so hard to create my delegation, every single word was handcrafted. I spent a lot of hours on that. And if they're not going to let me say that, then how can I just get on radio like Piatowski was and just speak off the top of my head? It's just, and it speaks to our culture right now. It's just so difficult to say anything, and people are terrified to speak at all about anything that matters. And there's so much intimidation going on.
Right. In the meantime, the chair was, while you were being isolated, the chair was free to make arguably defamatory comments about you, and then you started to receive abuse online. All of this was affecting your health. What ultimately happened with what was the health issue you suffered?
Well, I didn't. I think what I learned through all of that is that nobody's an island. And as much as I was saying to myself, what I did was right, he's lying about me, people will know the truth. Eventually, they took the video down, like quite quickly. They took the video down so people couldn't see what I actually had to say. So every day it got worse. I thought, if people can't see the video, how are they going to know I'm not transphobic and I'm not saying these horrible things he's accusing me of? So every day I had less sleep and I was more filled with anxiety. I had people calling me saying, you got to talk. And I didn't feel ready to talk. And it was like, all of a sudden, it felt like this, you weren't allowed to talk about this at all. So all kinds of things were going on that people weren't aware of. And then this giant microphone came to me. I was being called by reporters, and I felt like I can't speak into it because I'm so afraid. That fear I felt was intentional. They wanted to intimidate me. They did a super job of that. So every day I felt more anxious. I'm not an anxious person. I hadn't been on meds up until this. And I collapsed on the Saturday night. I collapsed. I was completely unconscious. I was taken to the hospital, and he said that if I had been sleeping, then I wouldn't have collapsed. And then I was put on some anti-anxiety meds, which helped. And I think it speaks to what I've learned is other people. This has happened to other people.
Oh yes.
In fact, Richard Bilkstrow, who took his own life for similar circumstances, had contacted me a few days after this happened to me, and he was supportive of me throughout. And I think that we're living in a culture which dehumanizes people who are not in the groups that are considered vulnerable. So I'm not considered a vulnerable population because of my skin color or because for whatever reason, I'm a teacher, I guess. So then I'm a fair target. I'm a fair target for that kind of abuse because only the vulnerable groups that have been identified are human beings, not everyone else. And
Carolyn, sorry to interrupt. What is you're taking legal action
yes.
Against the school board, the Waterloo Region District School Board, and also specifically the chair at that time of the school board. What is the latest on this legal action?
So yesterday I was in court. I was downtown Toronto in the Court of Appeals. The school board lost they tried to throw my defamation suit out using anti-SLAPP legislation, which is an abuse of anti-SLAPP legislation, if you know what anti-SLAPP legislation
yes.
is. It's supposed to support the David against the Goliath, but they used it against me. So they're the Goliath and they used it against me. Well, they lost that case back in November when Justice Ramsey had a very decisive and fantastic speech about this should never have happened in a democratic society. And he said, they used the Human Rights Code to justify kicking me out, but the Human Rights Code doesn't stop anybody from saying anything, and that's an important point for everybody to know, that because these codes are being used to silence people, and that's actually illegal. So anyways, they lost the case, and then they appealed it. So that was the appeal yesterday that we heard. And really what's happening here is what we see as lawfare. They know that they have an endless supply of taxpayers' funds to keep challenging me and appealing me right up to the Supreme Court, and that I have limited funds. I'm very grateful for my funders on GoFundMe, who I've been able to raise enough funds to fund each step of the way. And I always put these videos out. People are very generous and they care about this. I know a lot of the public really cares about this issue because they see it as a problem in our culture. If people can't say what they are concerned about, if they feel intimidated, that's not democracy.
No. Well, you're to be commended. You are courageous, and I think the individuals on the Waterloo Region District School Board have just demonstrated their cowardice, and this is really sinister, absolutely sinister and toxic and corrosive, what they are doing, not only to you, but others. And God bless you for standing up and fighting. CanceledTeacher.com. We can find out more information there about your story. Do you want to give us a plug for the GoFundMe? Is it GoFundMe you're using?
Sure. If you go on CanceledTeacher.com, you'll see the GoFundMe out there. And there's also other ways to support the actions against the school board.
All right, CanceledTeacher.com. Carolyn, thank you so much, and I appreciate your courage again and taking some time to speak with us. God bless.
Thanks a lot, Richard. It's a pleasure.
All right, Carolyn Burjoski. If you can't fight, you've got to help the fighters, and Carolyn Burjoski is a fighter. CanceledTeacher.com. Help her out.